are doing a series on family. It's always interesting talking about family because it's so personal. I don't know if you realize that when you deal with family stuff, family's personal. And we're about to get into the holidays, and Thanksgiving's coming and Christmas is coming after that. And some of you absolutely love your family, and others of us struggle with some people in our family, some people not. Not me. Both sides of my family are absolutely 100% amazing. I would never, ever say anything about my in-laws ever, especially when my wife is in the room. Right, fellas? So we're never going to do that ever because I love them way too much. No, actually, they're awesome. So now I got to figure out what we're going to do because I just put my foot in my mouth. So there's that. We're going to talk about families. And what we did is a couple weeks ago, we started talking in Psalms chapter 128. And we did a couple different proverbs that talked about, like, it all starts with the foundation of a healthy soul. We talked about the fear of the Lord and where does a family come from and who built the family and the structure of a family and all that. And we've talked about all that kind of stuff, how God created family. God created family. And I don't know about you, but there is nothing easy or simple in life that includes family stuff, right? I don't know if we realize this, but as adults, we think elementary school is easy. But when you're in third grade, elementary school isn't so easy, right? And so it all just depends on the season and the different stages of life that we are in. And there's always stuff that comes up. I almost think kind of parenting is kind of like going to the dentist. This is you do a lot of work for about a year, and then you go in to see if you're doing a good job. Right? You brush, you floss, you do all the things, and then you go in and you're like, am I doing good? They're like, yeah. You're like, awesome. Or like, ooh, you got 13 cavities. That's a bad year. Right? And parenting is kind of like that, except we don't get like yearly checkups. You find out when they're 32 and they have 3 little rugrats of their own, and you're like, how did I do? Just as a heads up, there has been no perfect parent. So if you're trying to be the perfect parent in the world, there has never been one. Like, well, Jesus. No, Jesus wasn't a parent. So you're safe. Right? There has never been a perfect parent, so we're not here to try to be a perfect parent or have a perfect family or try to have the perfect kid because there is no such thing as any of those things. In fact, everybody needs work. I don't know if you know that, but like everybody needs to have something that they have to work on. The difference is are we willing to embrace that work and do the work to get better and to change and to see the things or not? That's really what a lot of stuff boils down to is people hear things and they go, oh, I should really work on that, I should change that, and then they don't. And somebody else hears the same exact thing and they go, yeah, man, I need to work on that, and they do, and it changes. So today we're going to look at Psalms 128 again. We're going to look at Psalms 1, verse 3 and verse 6. I'll read verse 3 to you first. It says this: your wife will be like a fruitful grapevine, flourishing within your home. Your children will be like a vigorous young olive trees as they sit around your table. So today we're going to look at that issue of an olive tree, and we're going to look at the big picture of sitting around tables. See, I see this verse, and here's what I think of. I think of a vineyard, I think of olive trees, so you're thinking of lush green grass, a lush green backyard, with the table sitting around it, eating lunch or dinner or something. And I'm like, this is the picture of a family. People spending time together, growing up, doing life outside, and it's 72 degrees, and it's awesome. I think, honestly, some of our best memories should be sitting around a table, eating together. Can I just tell you something? Make eating together a priority as early as you can. Because once they get older, they're not around. Right? If you wait till they're 16 to start having conversations around the dinner table, they won't be around at 16 because they have lives and they're doing too much. Right? Like we have a meeting tonight. We have 2 things tomorrow night, 2 things Tuesday night, something Wednesday night, something Thursday night. So, and then it's Friday night, and kids aren't around on Friday nights either. Right? Because they're like, friends, party, woohoo. So it just gets busy. It just gets busy. But I do think there's absolutely something very powerful about eating around a table, doing things together. One of the things that I think that I love about the table is there's a parable of the table. And Jesus was trying to find people to come to the party. And nobody wanted to come. And he had to go into the highways and the byways and the alleyways and find anybody and everybody to come. And it's just a simple illustration to do that everybody's welcome at the table. One of the things that I've always been a red flag, just for me, personal red flag for me, is we go to somebody's house and they'd have one room for the adults and another room for the kids. It's like, no, like anytime we have had success, anytime our kids are eating with us, can I just encourage you, eat together. Let your kids hear the conversations that you have as adults. They're going to pick up on them anyways. Let them hear them. Be around each other. It's okay. They're going to hear them. So what we're going to do, is we're going to look at 7 principles to deal with preparing our kids for outside the home, because they're only here for a little time. They're only here for a little time. And we have to make sure that we discipline and we talk in real life, because real life exists everywhere. And that's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how Jesus taught. I think it's hilarious. Like, Jesus didn't take his 12 disciples and take them to Bible college. Like, okay, guys, you're going to go sit in Bible school for the next 10 years. No, he was like, come along, follow me. Let's go fishing. Let's figure this out. He just taught in real life examples, so we as parents need to teach in real life examples too. All right, 7 principles for preparing your kids for outside the home as we think of an olive tree growing outside, all this kind of stuff. Here we go. Number 1 is this: think like a grandparent. Verse 6 says this: may you live to enjoy your grandchildren, and may Israel have peace. Israel stands for family, stands for community, stands for city, stands for country, all that kind of stuff. You want to have a peaceful environment in your house, think like a grandparent. And I actually put this thing first because, ironic, I've always picked on my mother-in-law for parenting like a grandparent. My wife grew up different than I did, y'all. Anybody with me? She grew up completely different. She would come home every day with cookies and sweets, fresh baked cookies and fresh baked sweets. I thought she was lying for when she first told me this. She wasn't. She wasn't. I thought it was hilarious. Grew up like a normal human being. I grew up having cake on birthdays and holidays. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I grew up. Not her. Like, I literally thought she was messing. I'm like, no, she wasn't. Because when we first met, she had younger siblings. They were still at the home. I remember, like, going there and being like, there's cookies? Like, every day? She's like, duh. I'm like, what in the world is going on, right? Like, this is not healthy. Whew. But here's the deal with grandparents. Grandparents are way more relaxed. Grandparents are way more relaxed. Remember when you first had kids? That nook fell out? You cleaned that thing 13 times before you put that thing back in that kid's mouth. That third kid, you know what you did? Like, right? Like, you see things differently after a while. Like, grandparents are a little bit more relaxed because they've been through life a little bit. They've been through life a little bit. They're like, what's a little mess there? What's a little mess there? And my mother-in-law was great at being chilled and relaxed. Right? She was fantastic. Still is. Right? Ruby is addicted to sugar because of my mother-in-law. She'd spend the night and she would legitimately make her sprinkles for breakfast. Bowl of sprinkles. Like, that is a real story. I'm like, I remember, can we throw her under the bus? I remember having like a serious conversation at the dinner table and being like, no, she's got to eat whatever, right? We've all been there. And my mother-in-law is sneaking like the cookies from the dinner and like behind her back. And I'm like, Melissa. She's like, why? You can't do anything about it. I'm like, dang it, I can't. That's my mother-in-law. That was my mother-in-law. Still is to this day. But they're so much more relaxed. They see the bigger picture. They see what's important. When you're older, you have a different measure of what success is. When you're 8, one thing's important. When you're 12, another one is. Right? And in those moments are so important because when they're 8, this is vitally important. Right? When you're in kindergarten, you know what the most important thing is? Show and tell. It's a big deal. But when you're 32, you don't care about show and tell. You're like, what's the big deal? but to a kindergartner, it's huge. When you're 16 and 17, there's different things that are important. When you're 33, certain things are important, but when you're 63, certain things are important. Another great thing about grandparents is this, is their egos are not attached. Dude, their egos aren't attached. They love seeing Billy play sports just because Billy's there goofing around having a great time. We show up to Billy's game and we're like, oh my gosh, he didn't score 38 points. Dude, there was 4 points scored the entire time in third grade basketball. You know what I mean? Like, we're over there like ready to pull out our hair. But grandparents like, that was so awesome. That was so much fun. I'm like, did we watch the same game? They made 3 baskets in 38 minutes. Like, we paid to watch this. Like, grandparents don't care. They don't care. They just love it. Love it. Here's the deal. Olive trees, man. They have this idea. Grandparents have a way of staking things to certain values that are so important. Olive trees, when they first are planted, they need to be tied to stakes in the ground so they can grow properly. And grandparents have a way of knowing exactly what the important values are. So values are so important, right? Values as a country. Don't get me started. Just vote. We'll say that. I didn't bring it up. Just vote. I talked about it the last 2 weeks. I've said enough. Just vote. If not, don't you ever throw a fit. All right. There you go. But this is why values are so important. Companies, organizations, they need values. Our homes need values. Here's what we're going to stick to. Here's what we're going to go by. Here's what's important. As human beings, as like individuals, we need values. What's important to you? But here's the key. If you tie the stake too close, if you tie it too close to an olive tree, it'll choke out an olive tree and it'll keep it from growing. And when it does that, it'll actually leave scars on the actual tree. And it got me thinking, not to get too serious right away, how many of us adults have scars from the stakes and the values that were tied to us as younger people? Okay, we'll go funny again. Ready? Here we go. Number 2, be patient. Be patient. Oh, I'm not good at this. It takes 4 to 7 years for an olive tree to see any type of fruit from it whatsoever. It'll take 10 to 15 years for an olive tree to have a full bloom. 10 to 15 years for a full crop. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of planting. That's a lot of watering. That's a lot of choices. That's a lot of dedication. That's a lot of disciplining our kids. That's a lot of stuff. Can you be patient enough with your kids? Can you be patient enough with yourself? I mean, sometimes we're our harshest critics. We can't even be patient enough with ourselves. How can we be patient enough with anybody else? That's why forgiveness is so key. Why do you think Jesus was like, dude, not just forgiving somebody like 7 times a day, 70 times 7? Because he knew the patience that we are going to need to have. That's why whether it's at siblings or parents or couples, we need to have the right foundation. Here's a tip. Parents, you don't have to tackle everything immediately. Anybody ever botched this one? Right? Like, so I remember a couple years ago now, I don't know, one of my kids, Owen, is probably our fiercest competitor. We'll put it that way. And we had family in town. He's having a basketball game, and he was like, he really wanted to win this game. And he was diving after loose balls, jumping over people. And it got to the point he was yelling at teammates. I mean, he was just into it. And at one point, he takes the ball, boom, slams as hard as he can. It hits the tip of his shoe, boing, like 30 yards the other direction on the other court. Ref grabs him. Coach sits him down, just benches in the home game. He shut up, right? You can't do that. It's elementary school basketball, people, right? But he wanted it so bad. Tina, in her amazing wisdom, Gary, do not bring this up right away, because she was leaving to go do something else, and I was taken to his next game. And I was like, sure, I'll wait. I got about 90 seconds, y'all. Like, I waited for a little bit. And it's not like the conversation went bad. I put it in his arm, like, dude, bro, like, you know better, right? There's probably a couple other things that were said in that conversation as well. I took what could have been an A conversation and turned it into a C conversation. Because it didn't go bad, but I blew it. It was just an average conversation. If I would have waited about 5 or 10 minutes till we got in the car to drove to the next location, it probably could have gone a little differently. What I said would have had a much better impact on the situation. But we don't need to handle everything right away. And it was all my fault. It wasn't his, right? It wasn't his. We all have to learn these things, to be patient, right? It's one thing to actually know this stuff. It's a whole other ballgame to apply it to our lives. Right? I get it. It is 100 times easier for me to preach all this stuff than it is for me to live it. Like, we're here for an hour and 15 minutes. We're out there for whatever many hours there are in a week. All right, but the point of coming here is to church isn't just to learn about changing something. It's to actually do it. Don't talk about it. Do it. Number 3, be humble. Be humble. Whew. This is hard. We live in an ever-changing world where we live in a world where we like to critique everybody all the time. Right? If we lead with too much confidence, we're accused of being cocky and arrogant. But if we openly admit, like, you don't know, you can get ripped apart for not leading with enough confidence. Because what people do is like, oh, he doesn't know anything. Why should I listen to him? He gets up on stage every week and says how bad of a parent he is. What, you know what I mean? Like, he falls on his sword way too much. I'm not used to that, so why should I ever listen to that? Here's what we have to remember. Respect is given, respect is not earned. We have this idea in our world that respect is earned. No, respect is something you give somebody else. Respect is something that is given. It's okay. It's okay to say, man, I don't know, right? And it's hard because I don't know about you, but I've got kids, right? And kids are really good at throwing stuff back in your face because they're kids, because you did it to your parents and their kids will do it to them. But it's really hard to go, I've never done this before. But you have to. You have to. Because it's not about just what happens in the 18 years that they live inside your home. It's about what's going to happen for the next 50 years of their life. Right? It's not just about what happened to you for the 18 years at your home. It's about what happened and how you're going to live for the 50 years after you've been in your house. You're reaping the rewards or the consequences of our own parents' actions right now. We all have. That's why therapy is so popular and makes so much money. Right? Can this backfire on you? Absolutely, it can backfire on us. This is why it's so important. This is why having a healthy soul is the most important thing. Because when you're secure in your relationship with the Lord, you're okay with being humble. You're okay with going, hey, this is what God called me to do, because Jesus was the picture perfect of humility. He came not to serve. He came not to be served, but to serve. He washed the disciples' feet. He even washed the dude's foot who was going to betray him just hours after. He's the ultimate example of humility. So if we're really going to model Jesus, we have to better be able to model it to our own kids. But it's hard. Right? There's a proverb that says, don't offer advice, because wise men don't need it and fools don't heed it. That's always hilarious. Live such a life, I'll say this, that people come to you rather than you having to say everything out loud. I know in our day and age of social media, it's really easy to try to become the next whatever. But if people aren't asking you for advice, it means they don't want it. You don't have to talk about yourself. If somebody really is like, wow, that person has changed so much, I want to know. I want to know. They'll ask. Be humble. Number 4, nobody is the same. Nobody is the same. Everyone is their own individual, needs to be treated, served, and helped as such. God created man in his image, means he's created our kids in his image. God didn't create our kids in our image. That's really hard. Our job is to help develop his image, not our own. There is 500 different varieties of olive trees. Some are grown for wood, some are grown for olive oil, some are grown for the fruit. They all serve a different purpose. So a question I have to ask is, what did God put in our kids that we have to get out? to change things a little bit for just us as individuals, what has God put in you that you have to get out? It's in there. It just has to be unfolded. Because here's what happens, is it never got developed, it never got unfolded when we were children. It never got developed. We made it through middle school just fine. We got through high school just fine. We moved out. We got married, blah, blah, blah. Had kids, didn't, single, whatever. Had a career, all the things. We're adults. We're all good. But what God really put inside of you was you're never in an environment where that was allowed to grow and allowed to come out and allowed to be seen. So it's still stuck in there. And it's really hard to live a life that says, these kids are God's. My job and my role as a parent is to pull the stuff that God has put in them out. If you've never pulled the stuff in your life out, that's hard. This is why we have midlife crises. Because we do all this stuff as adults and we sit back in the middle of our lives at some point, whether you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, and you go, now what? Who am I? Who am I? And we see people do all sorts of crazy stuff because they never unfolded everything that God put inside of them. They were never in that environment to do that. They may have made it through. They may have got a good career, a college education. They may have money. They may have this or that. But deep down inside, their souls are not healthy. I think we need to do a much better job of trying to see what our kids do well rather than what they don't do well. Here's what I mean. Picture this. Imagine a world where our kids get grades. Okay? A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. I know, crazy. If you have kids in school, you're like, blows my mind. Wait, what? I know. Just imagine. And your kid comes home with a report card, gets an F, a couple D's, a couple C's, a B, an A. And the parent looks at it and goes, oh my gosh, how did you get an F? How did you get so many D's? What's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. You ignore the A and the B. You're just concentrating on the F's and the D's. Yeah, those would probably be addressed. Like, do you have like 13 missing assignments? Probably not a good idea. Right? Because let's face it, at any realm in life, if you just did your schoolwork, you're going to pass the class. Anyways. But why don't we just look at the A's and B's and go, look at what they're doing well. How can we help unfold what they're actually doing really well in? Because there's always something that our kids are doing well in. It can be band, it can be art, it can be math, it can be anything. It can be science, it can be tech ed, it can be mechanics. Like, there's a million things. But let's look at and develop that. Develop that. Can you imagine if Elon Musk's parents were like athletes? And they're like, you need to become a D1 athlete? They completely missed. Now, I have no idea who his parents are. Maybe they did. Hopefully not. This whole illustration would be thrown out the window. But like, they would have completely missed him as like a science engineer wizard, like, of everything that he has done. Let's see the strengths in the people around you, around us. Concentrate on the strengths. In the relationships in your own home, in yourself, will you concentrate on the strengths in your life? This brings us to point number 5. Verse 7, so we're almost done. And then we can go watch the Bears and the Vikings lose and the Packers win. No? All right. Don't underestimate your actions, number 5. Best thing you can do is just be there. Be there. Man, it is an honor and a privilege to be parents. It's not a chore, it's an honor and a privilege. Be there. There's a tree, it's one of the oldest trees in the world. It's one of the oldest olive trees. It's called the Great One. It's actually in Bethlehem. There's a picture of it, I think. And there is this tree, and it's just ginormous. No picture, Owen? Awesome. Thanks, buddy. I love you, buddy. There it is. Concentrate on the good. Concentrate on the good. There you see? I blew myself within 30 seconds. You know how hard? See, I told you. Don't call me out of my sermon. Get out of here. You're never allowed back. That's freaking hilarious. Anyways, eat my own words. Oh. This tree has been around, and they're trying. It's so old that they don't know exactly what tree is the oldest tree in the world, This tree's been around for anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 years. It's in Bethlehem. They legit say, like Jesus and David, 4,000 to 5,000 years this tree is old. That's old. That's old. What I'm trying to say is this: when you're developing olive tree, it takes 4 to 7 years to see any fruit whatsoever, 10 to 15 years to see a full crop, a full harvest. When you are willing to be patient and take the time to just be there, the impact will last for years. You'll see grandkids and great-grandkids. You'll see the impact they can have when you let the foundation come up and be the root of everything that it has. The impact will be a lifelong difference in yourself. And negatively too, though. Let's be honest, we've seen those though too. We have those. We look back and we're like, well, this happened, and this happened, and this happened. Yeah. The negative stuff has impacts too. That's the amazing thing about serving Jesus is, dude, when you said be born again, he legit says, let's wipe the slate clean. All the negative, all the bad, all the stuff. He's like, dude, you got a brand new start in life. Everything has been wiped clean. The slate is starting over. So just be there, right? Watch the dumb YouTube stuff that I complained about. All right, I can handle it for about 10 minutes. And I'm like, are you serious? You don't even watch the full freaking reel. Can you at least watch the whole thing so I know what they're talking about? Like, oh, it's so annoying. I sit in there for about 10 minutes. I got about 10, 12 minutes. And I'm like, all right, enough's enough. Can we turn on a real football game for once? Right? But just be there. Watch the stuff. Watch Daily Dose of Internet. Watch all the things just be there. Let them talk about nonsense that you don't really care about because you're a grown adult, but they really do because they're teenagers. Let them. Right? Let the 7-year-old talk about the drama in first grade. Why? Let them, because you're just there. You're there. One of the things that I've learned is that God's blessings are weighty. Like, I think a lot of times we think of God's blessings and we think like there's not a lot of weight or pressure to them. No, anytime God blesses you, especially family units and kids, like it's weighty, it's important. Like when God blesses you with something, and there's pressure. When you get a promotion, now there's people like before, like if you're on the same level at the bottom of the totem pole, because you get a raise, there's people below you. You're like, oh, there's pressure. And every time you move up a rank, there's more pressure. You ever run a business and then hire employees, there's pressure. Pressure. Right? So blessings always are heavy. Always. Always. Number 6 is this. We're almost done. You almost made it. You can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. Zechariah 4:6 says this. And here's why I'm using this story in Zechariah 4:6, because it's actually a story about 2 olive trees. You can read the whole thing. At the end of it, actually talks about how the 2 olive trees represented 2 angels standing at the gates of heaven, which is pretty cool. It says this. This is what the Lord says. It is not by force nor by strength, but by my spirit, says the Lord of heaven's armies. Listen, you can't do this alone. We need God's help. There's going to be so many moments in life where we feel lost, confused, helpless, worthless, and so many more. You can't do this alone. You can't do this alone. I think it's in Ephesians. It talks about, dude, we don't battle each other. You're not battling each other. I don't know about your kids aren't your enemy, right? Your spouse isn't your enemy. There is a real spiritual battle. We're going to talk about this more next week, but there's a real spiritual battle for our families, our marriages, our souls. There's a real battle. We need each other. Dude, the devil will love nothing more than to destroy your family. And it starts with destroying your soul, then he's going to try to destroy your marriage, and he's going to try to destroy your family. It's how he works. It's how he works. There's a very real spiritual component to having success in life. Big picture. Big picture. Mentalities, attitudes, everything. But we need people. People are so important. This is why church is so important, because we need people like Matt and Kathy pouring into our kids. That's why extracurricular activities are so important, because you need other people pouring into your kids. You can't be everything to your kid all the time. Right? You can't be it. You need other people coming alongside them and saying, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. You can't do everything for them. You got to put them in situations where they have other people speaking into their lives, calling them out. So you can come alongside and be a cheerleader. But if you're always a coach, if you're always a disciplinarian, if you're always this, if you're always that, it's really hard to come alongside and pick them up. I need other people to call my kid out on stuff. So I can be like, well, are they lying, son? Well, no. Okay, well, you talk too much in class, man. It's okay. It's okay. Like, because you need those moments of just picking them up and helping get along. But we need other people. Like, we do not exist in bubbles. We need people. Not just with our kids, we need people in life, right? We need people when you first have kids to make you meals. You need people, right? From having babies to, you need people sending you text messages, say, hey, go get them today, whatever it is. You need people to put their arms around your own kids and say, hey, I know you blew it. It's going to be okay. Let's go talk. Like, you need people. We need people. Number 7 is this. Always keep the end in mind. Always keep the end in mind. Who does God want your kids to be as an adult? He said, who, not what. Our society says a lot about what they do to be successful. God always looks at who they are. So 2 different things. We look at Elon Musk as successful because he has billions. Like, that dude is awesome because he's got billions. But God's going to look at him as successful if his soul is turned to him. So 2 different things. That's success. Granted, I want my kids to be successful, entrepreneurish, running companies. That'd be great. But the most important thing is their soul. Is their soul healthy? There is 935 weeks-ish, give or take, between birth and graduation. There's 935 Saturdays and Sundays and Mondays and Tuesdays. That's it. And every year there's 52 of them that go bye-bye. It happens fast. It happens in stages. There's 4 stages of parenting. Here's what they are. From ages 1 to 7 is discipline. Discipline, 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 discipline. Building that foundation. 7 to 12, training, 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 training. 12 to 18, coaching. Those are 2 different things. Training and coaching are different. After 18, that's friendship level. But what we do is we're still coaching when they're 28. That means we got something wrong. Got something wrong. Olive trees, when it first talked about in the Bible, was talking about stages. If you don't know anything, if you don't know, and you read Scripture, anytime the first thing is mentioned, there's this rule. It's called the rule of first mentions. So there's like meaning to things when it's first brought up. And the olive tree was first talked about when Noah was on the ark and he was trying to leave. He was trying to figure out, like, is there land? Is there not? What the heck do I do? And he sent the dove out, came back, sent the dove out again, came back with an olive tree branch. Cool, waited a little bit while, sent the dove out again, never came back. And so there's this idea of stages, the first time an olive tree is being talked about. So as parents, we need to be asking ourselves, are we preparing them for no guardrails? Are we preparing them for no training wheels? Are we preparing them for when we're not there to discipline them? We're not there to train them. We're not there to coach them. We're there to be their friend. I can't count how many times I've had these conversations, right? And now I have to have them because my kids are now in high school. I'm like, dude, I could care less. It's not about your room being clean. It's about you trying to figure out if you want to go to school, you're going to have a roommate. And your roommate may not like you like this, right? Like, because you're not going to be like, that's just a real thing. It's like, oh, okay. You can only do it for so long. Are we really preparing them? How we educate our kids? Are we really preparing them for not being around? How we help them handle friendship issues and more? How we do this? There's discipline, there's training, there's coaching, there's the friendship levels. We're not just trying to get them off to school. It's not just like, you just got to get out the door. You got them out the door. I can't count how many times parents who say that. Well, I got them there. They're out the door. They're in college. They're on their own. I did it. No, the goal isn't the first semester in college. No, the goal is the next 50 years of their life. Are you preparing them for all of it? Yeah, let's face it, working for NASA would be amazing. Running companies, cool. But where is our kids and where are their souls? That picture of a table outside next to some vines and next to an olive tree are flourishing. Are we preparing our kids to flourish? Are we preparing our kids to flourish? This is why uh, theology is so important, man. I talked to somebody a couple weeks ago that told me a story of a church in town, and I almost snapped. And I apologize because they had this thing happen a couple of years ago, and everything else was just. And I told this person, I go, that's spiritual abuse. Like, good for you for getting your kid out of there as quick as humanly possible, because it was bad. It was bad. Our number one priority has to be developing long-term healthy souls. Like, that's got to be our priority. Long-term healthy souls. That's why what we teach is actually important. That's why we're really picky on different curriculums that we use and this and that. Like, every curriculum that we've ever used in this church is used by hundreds of other churches. Because bad or wrong theology can and will lead to unhealthy souls. Bad biblical teaching will lead to unhealthy souls. How we develop our kids and how we're teaching them is really important. So, we always do this take them. So let me just ask you this question. How are you doing preparing your kids for life after you're home? How are you doing? How many conversations are you having? How many times do you eat together? It does matter. Right? Because all those little conversations build up. And the important stuff becomes a lot less stressful. When you've had thousands of other conversations with your kids about a whole bunch of other stuff, talking about the big stuff isn't nearly as difficult anymore. But when you haven't developed those relationships, then you try to go have them, you're like, oh, now what? It's hard. It's a lot harder to do. I don't know how are you doing. You do. You have to decide. You have to go home and look at this and go, man, are we actually flourishing? Have I tied my kids, if they're an olive tree, if the stake that I've tied them to is so tight because it's my way of doing things, that they're going to be in a therapist's office at 32 because of the scars that are left by us? I can't answer that for you. I got to answer that for myself. How are we really doing? Because I guarantee you, as an adult who has to look at this, I've had to go, oh no. What are the scars of my life currently? Do I have them? What are they from things that have taken place? Because we've all grown up different ways. There's things that growing up in church that I think my pastors did great, that my parents did well. And then there's other times I'm like, yeah, that was bad. How are you really doing? Our goal should be to see olive trees flourish. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. But if we're really going to have healthy families, it has to start with us having healthy souls. If we can have a healthy soul, then we can pour into ourselves correctly and we can see things and we can change and we can tweak them. We can be like, I can admit things. But without a healthy soul, you'll never be able to admit you're wrong and you'll never be humble enough to do so. I can't count how many times I've been like, gone to Ruby, like, girl, I have never raised a 16-year-old daughter. I am my bad. Like, I've read a lot of books about raising kids, y'all. But books can tell you one thing. Real life tells you a whole different ballgame. Right? Books can tell you what it's going to feel like. A book can describe what it's going to feel like after you start working out and you squat for the first time. But then you go to do squats and you get up the next day and you're like, this is like the book says one thing and you pictured a whole different ballgame. Books are great. Real life is just different. But we have to have a healthy soul. How are you doing preparing for kids for life after you're home? Because it's a quick season. They're going to spend the most of their life outside your home. If we're so concentrated on what happens inside the little couple years that we have them, there's a good chance there's going to be some struggles outside of it. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for all that we get to do. We thank you that